Hello everybody, Hal here. A couple of years ago I uploaded this video. One of my proudest creations, if I do say so myself. But in spite of its lengthy runtime, it wasn't supposed to be a standalone project. Instead, I was planning to keep adding content to the Rogue Trader mega project, including a series of live streams where I would test all of my crazy theories and come up with ideas for more in-depth guides. Other things happened in the meantime and this whole thing got put on the back burner, but now that I'm finally done with all of that, it is time to continue. I've already published a guide on how to get some quick cash through some less honorable methods, and I've put it into action during my first Rogue Trader livestream, which you can watch here. If you don't have 6 hours at your disposal, well, that's what this video is for, to recap the events of Carl's first 6 months on the continent of Calradia. This won't be a highly edited and detailed playthrough akin to Bandit's Ballads, because such an episode would take an entire month to edit and I don't have that much time. We'll keep things simple. Anyway, that's all I needed to disclose, so let us begin. Meet Carl Urbani, our resident rogue trader. During his early years, he developed his cunning and social skills. Charm, roguery, trade. I guess you could say he became a cunning linguist. After learning the basics with the help of his brother and a few other colorful characters, his real journey began and he attempted to trade goods between Poros and Zionica, but the economy didn't provide any opportunities for profit, so he joined a tournament instead. Carl fought valiantly until the finale, but in the end, he couldn't match a legionary's skill and he lost that one. But there's other tournaments around and they would be a good opportunity to earn some valuable prizes and increase his fame. Carl's plan was to also transport goods in between cities where these tournaments were being held and earn a bit of coin that way, but he got really unlucky with the starting economy and had to scrap that part of his plan. On his way towards the next town, Carl ran into a group of 26 looters which he easily defeated through sheer cunning. He rode up to them and kept one half distracted, while his men slaughtered the other half, and when the thieves' morale was broken, Carl used them as training dummies to develop his riding, athletics, and one-handed weapon skill. When we got to Jalmaris, I found nothing but a job opportunity, so I decided to look for something else and eventually got a quest which required me to transport 10 sheep to some faraway town, so I gladly accepted and took the sheep to Zionica instead, where I sold the livestock for a total of 972 dinars. Free money! All it cost was some reputation with the quest giver, since I couldn't fulfill his request. By the first week, I had a bit over 4,000 dinars in my pocket, which wasn't a lot, but it was enough to invest in some Battanian horses. I didn't go there directly, however, as I got distracted by some looters and a few other opportunities to earn some money in the imperial towns I passed through. One of those opportunities was to bring a local gang leader some of the weapons I took from the looters I killed. 4 one-handed axes for 2,000 dinars. That's pretty good, given our current situation. Then I found out a tourney was being organized in a nearby town, so I rode there post-haste, enrolled in the event, and put up an entertaining show for the townsmen. First 2 rounds were pretty easy, but the last 2 required me to fight as best as I could, which wasn't enough to help me win. I also had to rely on some dirty fighting techniques, such as running away from an enemy and quickly punishing his missed strikes, or getting another one stuck in the local architecture. With those tricks up my sleeve, I was able to barely win the competition and win an ugly helmet to protect my brain from lethal injuries. And that's how I would win most tournaments in the future, such as the one in Ortizia, which rewarded me with a cataphract lance worth about 1,000 gold. After completing another easy job, I had scraped together 10,000 dinars. My only disappointment was that I didn't do any trading at all, but I'll blame the economy at the time, which was scrambled beyond recognition. I then made my way to Battania, bought some cheap pack mules, waited for the villagers from Svendrin to leave their homes and purchased some cheap horses from them as well, had a chat with a couple of local lords and then managed to find some cheap stuff to buy in Seonon, which brought me a bit of profit when sold into Marunath. My very first trade, finally, after more than 2 weeks. Because Botania had a lot of cheap stuff, I purchased as much as my donkeys could carry and returned into the heart of the Empire, where I made a few more trades and climbed back to 10k. Commerce isn't the only thing I've done to reach that amount. I've also fought bands of looters and taken a few odd jobs here and there. One of those odd jobs required me to convince a group of smugglers to retire. This continent isn't big enough for more than one rogue trader to be roaming around. Don't worry about them. My silver tongue was enough to get them to quit, but if it wasn't, my tongue would have become iron as I let the blade do the talking. Since I was in the area, I also approached some horse ranchers and bought their merchandise for an extremely affordable price, even going as low as 98 dinars per mount. Another important thing I've done here was recruiting my first companion, Lazif the Falcon, a man from the lands of the Aserai who has the potential of becoming one of my greatest generals in the future. Without any particular plan in mind, I spent the next few days just roaming around the Empire, buying and selling whatever had the potential of bringing me the most profit, exchanged cheap tools for expensive war horses, hunted down bandits, and enrolled in as many tournaments as I could, claiming victory in all of them thanks to my dirty fighting style and lavishing in the rewards I had gained. Because of all my acts of valor, word of my deeds has spread across imperial towns and my renown has increased to the point where my clan was actually recognized as a noble house. This actually permitted Karl to mount a rescue operation for his family, which got captured by bandits during the first few days of their journey. After some trouble, his brothers and sister were saved from the grasp of bandits, as an outlaw took revenge on his former partner. Soon after, as we were traveling towards Botania, I received a messenger from the Southern Empire, bearing an invitation from the Empress herself to join her faction as a mercenary. They weren't at war with anybody, so I accepted because the contract would put some money in my pocket even if I only fought looters. Some extra cash never hurt anybody. When I arrived in the town of Lageta, I met my next companion, Ayasa the Leopardess, a fellow rogue trader. I also spent a bit of money on stuff that would hopefully bring me a profit later on, and then I made my way into Penkanok, where I found yet another trader companion, spent even more money on random goodies, and then paid a visit to the Botanian towns to the north. And that's the first time when Lady Luck smiled down on me, because Dunglanis hosted a tournament that offered an Asaligat as a reward. For those who don't know, the Asaligat is a royal mount that can fetch a minimum of 15,000 dinars, making it one of the most valuable prizes you may claim in a tourney, so I had to win this one. I did attempt to fight fair for a bit, but when I saw how relentless my opponents were, I resorted to using my dirty tricks and claimed the mount, plus whatever I earned by betting on myself. After purchasing a few more goods, I set course towards Ortizia, trying to pawn off the things I've bought, and I did earn a fair amount of coin. But my caravan was getting a bit heavy with all the tools we've scrounged up from one town or another, and the best place to sell those is further south, into Aserai territory. Before reaching Sanala, I won a pair of armored boots in another tourney, sold some goodies in Kuyas and bought some cheap mules, and when I arrived to my destination, I earned a good amount of coin from all my investments. I still had a ton of tools left, however, so I needed to find more buyers, but in the meantime, I took advantage of my time in the desert to attack some bandits and attempt to recruit the survivors. Having bandits in his party is rather important for a rogue trader, for reasons I'll disclose at a later date. When a village elder asked me to cull the local raider population, I obliged and engaged 3 gangs in one battle. Only 2 of the enemies survived, but I claimed some rather valuable loot from the bandits. A bag of expensive jarids, a legendary mace, and an armored robe which looked much more luxurious than the hillman rags I was wearing. It made me look a lot better, adorned with all the arena prizes I was sporting at the time. I then spent some time recruiting Aserai cavalry units and whatever bandits were lucky enough to survive my attacks, until I decided it's time to leave the desert. Before I did, however, I raided a hideout to get a few more outlaws to join my ranks. By the time I was back in Imperial territory, I gathered 46,000 dinars and a lot of wares that would bring even more money from the right buyer. But my mission at this point wasn't to get rich. It was to convince some hill tribes to join my crew because when fully upgraded, the Highwaymen are some of the strongest bandit units in all of Calradia. Decent weaponry, decent armor, lethal javelins and cheap mounts. Everything that a rogue trader needs. Well, not everything, but they're still pretty good. I need cavalry if I want to travel faster. After assaulting some smaller crews, I went to Artesia where I sold some of my wares, reached nearly 55k and then proceeded towards a hideout, where I was planning to kidnap some bandits and have them join my enterprise. On the way there, however, I also encountered a pretty large gang, so I extended my invitation to them as well. Those attacks yielded a lot of potential manpower, but after that, chaos ensued. Not the kind of chaos that would threaten my business, but the kind where it's difficult to remember exactly the events that happened and the order in which they happened, but basically, I spent the next few weeks just going from town to town, trading goods, participating in tournaments, training my skills and recruiting hardened criminals into my organization. One thing is certain, I kept moving forward towards my goals. Maybe not in the most efficient manner possible, but steady progress matters more than speed. All you need to know is that my biggest money makers were the tournaments because I obtained a lot of royal mounts which fetched 15,000 dinars each. After a while, I decided to invest 15k into a caravan, but honestly, it didn't perform as well as I was expecting. At some point, it even managed to lose me nearly 3,000 dinars in a single day. Caravans are a worthwhile investment, but you need many of them in order to steadily increase your net worth, and for the moment they're risky because I was planning to enlist as a mercenary and raid other merchant caravans instead. Legally. Oh, and those war horses I obtained earlier by supplying villages with tools or purchasing them from traveling villagers? I found a lord requiring 5 of them and obtained nearly 10k. Pretty good return on investment considering I paid about 1,000 in total. I also obtained another 8k by getting a would-be revolutionary to cease his foolishness at once, even though, to be honest, I empathized with his cause. Who doesn't hate paying taxes? But I like money more than I hate taxes, so I had to do it. I'm glad I could solve this one diplomatically as well. I hate unnecessary bloodshed more than taxes. A short while after signing a mercenary contract with the Northern Empire, I ran into a Western patrol that was slightly outnumbered by my warband. Seeing this as an opportunity to get even more rich and famous, I grabbed it by the horns. The battle itself was easy because my opponent's troops consisted mostly of infantry, which foolishly marched to attack the cavalry I positioned on their right flank. In doing so, they turned their shields away from my archers and got shot like fish in the barrel before my horsemen charged and finished the job. When the battle was done, I briefly considered releasing the lord I captured, hoping for increased relations with his clan, but then I realized I could improve my relations even faster if I took him captive. I am a schemer with an uncanny ability to delay instant gratification for an even better potential reward in the future. You'll see what I mean when the time comes. Shortly after that, I robbed some peasants, plundered their village, and then found the first caravan I was going to raid. I had to be careful though. The Western Empire isn't our only enemy. When I caught the caravan and made sure nobody would interfere, I made one simple request: your money or your lives. To be honest, this battle was a lot more difficult than the one I shared with my captive lord because of the enemy variety, so we had to be more methodical. First we waited for their mounted crossbowmen to perform strafing runs on us, and eliminated them with a combination of crossbow bolts and cavalry charges. Then their cavalry attacked but got picked off before they could cause any major damage. Finally, enemy archers approached our position, but not only were they outclassed by my rangers, but also got trampled by my nearly intact cavalry. 3 of them did manage to escape and I allowed them to flee with their lives. As I've said, I'm a schemer. I've done this for a reason. The spoils of war were pretty good, but even better, the 3 escapees were overburdened by their survivor's guilt, which allowed us to easily catch up to them and demand the rest of their stuff. All in all, I got some of the dead men's gear, 3/4 of the caravan's cargo, and a few of their horses. That's pretty good, but in order to really make money raiding caravans, it needs to be done on an industrial scale. Still, as a rogue trader, I'm supposed to be good at industry. Not long after that raid, I made my way to Epikrotea, waited for the siege to stop so I can walk in, threw Casinon in the dungeon and then rested in town for a couple of days to wait for my wages to arrive. When the income dried up, I quit my job, bribed my way into the dungeon and mounted a rescue operation for the lord I imprisoned. It took a bit of effort, but when we made our escape, not only did I gain a lot of standing with Casinon's noble family, but also greatly developed the skills I'll need to survive in politics. After that stunt, I rejoined the Northerners, attempted to steal some horses from a western village, got chased off by the local authorities and then decided to head into the steppe to conscript some outlaw horse archers because my party size just increased. Those last few battles earned me a lot of fame and more people would flock under my banner. The road east was mostly smooth, and when I arrived in the Kuzeet city of Odok, I was greeted by a local crime boss who kindly asked me to help him pull off a profitable scheme. He knew what kind of a person I am. Without hesitation, I said yes. To boil it down, I needed to participate in 5 tournaments and make sure I throw some fights and win some others to the exact specifications of my employer who would place smart bets on me, knowing in advance what I was going to do. It's like the medieval version of insider trading. It was difficult for me to fulfill my employer's request in the very first tournament I joined because the reward was one of those royal mounts that are worth 5 times more than what the job would pay. But my brother joined the tourney with me, and even though I nearly lost in the second round, instead of the 4th as I was asked, we both qualified for the finals and I allowed him to best me in combat. This way, I fulfilled the mobster's request and won the hyper-expensive horse for myself. My brother's victory is my own. If only we could pull off such stunts in all the tournaments we participate in. After that, I found a couple of steppe bandit hideouts, captured some marauders, fought in more tournaments, and traded some items here and there. You know, the usual. One tip I have to mention: if you're good at something, never do it for free. A nearby village felt unsafe with a hideout so close to them, so the notables offered to pay me 3,000 dinars to wipe it off the map. I gladly accepted their proposal since I was planning to raid that hideout anyway. Sometimes you may find such a mission in towns as well and double your earnings, but I didn't have such luck. As I was going towards my next tournament, I noticed a rival mercenary raiding a friendly caravan. I was supposed to give a helping hand, but that would have been uncharacteristic of a schemer such as myself. So I allowed the enemy to do their job, and when the caravan was no more, I launched my attack. I have no idea how the fight went. I just sent my men to deal with them while I took a well-deserved nap. When that was done, the 22 prisoners of war we've rescued joined my crew, I claimed their loot and we proceeded west to imprison my captive and finish the betting fraud mission. Speaking of which, there's a tournament right here in Amprella which I was supposed to lose in the 4th round. I don't know if I made my loss believable. I then made my way to Mizea since that's where the next competition was being held, and I won that one as per my employer's request. The 5th and final tourney I was supposed to participate in wasn't too far off, a bit to the south in Cyronea, which offered me another pleasant surprise: amazing prices for everything I was carrying on my saddlebags, including the tools I was hoarding for weeks by this point. After that sale, we proceeded with the main event. In a cruel twist of fate, the reward that was being offered to the victor was another Asaligat, and my partners in crime asked me to lose this one at the 3rd round. You may not know this about me, but I am unquestionably loyal to whatever makes me the most money. If there's a way to have one of my clanmates win the tourney and still get the job done, I will, but if I can't, I'll prioritize getting the royal mount since it's worth way more than the mission reward. Unfortunately, in the 3rd round, my brother was matched up against me, and if I let him win, he would have surely lost against the Lord and his team. The truth is, he's outclassed, both in terms of gear and combat prowess, so it was up to me to secure a nice payday for my clan. When I made it to the final round, I was fully prepared to use my dirtiest fighting techniques to ensure my victory. Luckily, that was not needed and I was able to win fair and square, giving everybody an entertaining show full of twists and turns and unexpected outcomes. And that includes my employer, which was less than pleased with my overachiever attitude. Because I played it fair, I gained 4,500 dinars as a reward from the town merchants, gained another 600 from the bets I've placed on myself, and most importantly, claimed a horse that's worth over 15,000 dinars. Sources close to the mobster told me he was willing to pay 2.5k, so I'd say the 20 grand I earned from doing my own thing was much better. But I kinda forgot about my colleague, which was rotting in the dungeons of Umbrella, waiting for me to rescue him. So I returned, bribed my way into the dungeon, and prepared to extract my target, preferably alive. That was an extremely difficult task. I saw possible futures all at once. Our enemies are all around us, and in so many futures they prevail. But I did see a way. There was a narrow way through. After much meditation, I was able to recognize what I needed to do in order to win, and I'll give you the details if you're willing to listen. When I encountered my first enemy, I opened with a quick jab, then went to a more spacious room where we dueled for what felt like an hour. In reality, it only lasted for a few seconds, but it was intense, and I was surprised to find out I emerged unscathed. On my second encounter, I knew that an enemy is just around the corner. I'm prepared for what's coming, so I readied an overhead strike and hit him with all my might. It wasn't enough to put him down, however, so I had him follow me into a doorway where his sword got stuck a few times, giving me ample opportunity to retaliate. Still tense, but that was the easy part because two heavily armored enemies were waiting for me in the next room. I attempted to neutralize one of them with my throwing knives, but I barely scratched him, so I ran back to my colleague, hoping that he'll distract one of them at the very least. My plan worked, but even so, I got sliced up pretty good and still had at least two opponents to deal with. Fortunately, only one of them heard the commotion and came to investigate, leaving the other one behind by the exit. In 1v1 I actually stand a chance. Unable to think of anything better, I got this lad to follow me into the doorway and dueled him for a very long time. But I eventually prevailed and proceeded towards the exit and my final confrontation. Now, I didn't know exactly where my last enemy was, so I threw a dagger at the door in order to distract him. When he showed himself, I threw my last two knives into his chest and continued dueling him in another doorway. This time, I was much more efficient, and when the violence stopped, I shouted at the prisoner that the way is clear. And so, we made our way out, our standings improved, and I managed to train my political skills even further. And that's everything that happened during Karl's first 6 months on the continent of Calradia. If we were to boil it down to a single sentence, our hero went from a poor peasant to a rich and renowned mercenary merchant who leads almost 100 men in battle. But this was merely a brief recap of a summary of everything that occurred. If you want every last detail, you may watch the replay of my first stream right here and get ready for the next one. I'm trying to be a bit more active on the second channel. Making my usual videos takes a lot of playing the games and testing things out, which I usually do all alone in complete silence. But a lot of interesting things could happen throughout my campaigns, and I've decided to share the process with whoever wants to tag along for the journey, but I'll do so on my second channel, since the main one has to maintain an image of professionalism, a certain mystique, if you will. I don't know if I'll make such a recap for every other stream I'll do in the future. My primary goal is to complete my Rogue Trader tutorial project for Bannerlord, but we'll see. I don't want to make any promises I cannot keep. Anyway, thank you lads for watching, and I'll see you live tomorrow. And by tomorrow, I mean the day after this video is released. But yeah, if you want to support, you know what you can do. Hope to see you soon. Goodbye.